Thank you all for sticking around, for coming in. This is our panel discussion entitled What About Tomorrow?, where we are discussing issues of sustainability. We're going to talk, I'm going to touch a little bit on concerns about systems thinking when it comes to sustainability. And I want to take a second and introduce the panel. Those of you who were just here, you heard Daniel Tuitt, lead service designer at Developed Thinking and Climate Labs. Geke van Dijk, the co-founder and strategy director at STBY. Is it?
Standby.
Standby. Okay. She comes to us with a background in ethnographic research and user-centered design and service strategy. And we have Samuel Huber, the co-founder of 4 Planet Strategy Lab and a research fellow at Zurich University for the Arts. So thank you all for joining us. Everybody can see that. I don't want to be in the way. Unfortunately, we kind of have to be crowded over here just because of the lighting, and we want everybody online to be able to see as well. So, Daniel, I want to start with you. Right, one of the things, and Samuel, you touched on this a little bit as well. Right, that idea that designing for sustainability and for addressing climate issues, it's not just about the climate issue, right? And so how do you engage with people, kind of to her question, and for the wider audience, I want to go into it a little more, right? How do you engage the participants to really start to take that much more global, universal, circular approach to addressing what may at the surface be a singular problem?
Mm-hmm. I think it goes back to the question of what can I do? I'm just one person. I think everyone here knows that we shouldn't be eating meat, we shouldn't be traveling on airplanes as much, and so on and so on and so on. We should save water. And everyone thinks about, oh, it's just one more action. But together, as a society, we're dramatically making big change. We're impacting the planet in a huge way. And I always try to think about this in long terms, and it's hard for people to think about that, especially if you're not used to systems thinking where one thing impacts another over time. How I try to help organizations and communities as well, I try to think about what's in it for them, because everyone's a hero. How does it impact them in their lives, and then help them think broader. So a good example, COVID, for example. I'm young, I'm healthy, COVID doesn't really impact me, but I always bring the story of what about that 80-year-old lady that lives on the top floor. She's alone. If she gets COVID, she's going to be impacted. That's going to have knock-on effects on the healthcare system. That's going to have knock-on effects on other issues as well. So let's say if there's a couple of people that are going to have babies, for example, how are they going to be impacted? So it's thinking about the second and third order effects. Starting small, starting to think about them as the person that's being impacted, and then slowly bring them on the journey.
Geke, you?
Completely agree. It's not about us or the planet. We are the planet, so every one of us constitutes of, we can call it a system indeed, but that's for some people that's like theory, but it's not about theory, it is about our lives. So yes, it super much connects, every small thing you do. And I had a little aha moment at the conference where we had talks which were really good, like Do No Harm and KIA this morning about failures. That's about individuals. And we have fantastic talks, Miranda, circularity and other ones. And it's connected. It's not two sides of service design. It's the donut. The Do No Harm bit is inside, plan is outside, but it's not, oh, I do a project on this or I do a project on that. If we don't connect it, we're in the danger zone. We have to think of all of that, not only if your client asks for it, but you have to think of it. Well, anyway, sorry to go off on a rant, but this was a thought that was forming in my head. So yeah, it's all connected, and individual is the planet, and the planet is the individuals.
Samuel, do you have anything to add, or I've got
hard.
another question lined up for you. If you
Every point I was trying to make, you just said and you said.
All right. Well, so here's if the planet is a system, which it is, if it is a living system that responds to stimuli the way any system would. A theory that I got introduced to a year or so ago during COVID was that the planet, as a system, responds back. Right? Like any living organism is going to fight for its own survival. So in what ways do you feel like the Earth is fighting for its own survival in very physical ways, and how do you maybe then take that into account in your design and the way you're giving some thought to some of these sustainability issues?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I don't know that theory, actually, that the planet is fighting back. The easy answer would be...
It may be fringe, I will admit. I don't know.
The easy answer would be, look at this summer, right? So much rain, so many fires. But I also learned that it's actually kind of wrong to take these extreme cases. I know they're getting more and more, and say, look, this is what happened. The planet as a system is much more complex. It's a system of systems. If it's fighting back, I don't know, but it is definitely being shaped, right? There's this talk, are we entering the Anthropocene, where actually humans are shaping the planet? There's people that are even further ahead. They're saying we're post-Anthropocene. But I think the main question is, what is our impact on the planet, and how is it starting to really hurt us? And we see that on a variety of levels, where this is really taking place. Yeah, how we can take that into our design practice, that's really tricky. I would argue not to fight against the planet, but more use maybe, what is it called, jiu-jitsu, where you take what's being thrown at you and you turn into something more positive, and then use that momentum to maybe get the system to change in a good way. And this involves, and you said that before, the planet is not just nature. It is us as well. It is all the other systems that are connected, the ecological and the societal systems coming together.
See it as a fight.
Yeah, and not
Maybe we
see it as fight.
should see it as a fight.
See it as a dance.
Yeah, it's a continuum, so everything you do affects it. That makes it easier maybe, because it can be intimidating as well. We're in a very dire situation, so it can be a bit like you're saying, what can I do to break it down in whatever you do, is as long as it's in the right direction and it's not harming not just not people, but also not the planet or nature, then it's good.
Daniel, you?
I think there's also a thing to add and build on what was discussed. So there's this element of how do we learn from what's been done in the past in terms of good and bad, so learn from lessons, but also the next generation I'm so jealous of in general. The amount of friends that have kids that are telling their mums and dads, go vegan, we're damaging the planet, or you shouldn't be doing this. And it's funny, you've got 2 adults and this little 5-year-old that has more power in terms of the whole behaviors, in terms of what they eat and some of the activities they do day by day. So that's really important. But also, my final point, should I say, is that humanity and the planet are starting to work with each other to slowly heal. We're trying to hopefully get back to, or even get to a better place over time. So a good example, to reduce heat in places like Mexico or Abu Dhabi, they're creating new greenery to make places cooler. They're considering, how do we improve our way of life? I've done some work in the UAE, and it's funny that that region is the highest, they get impacted the most by vitamin D because they're always in sheltered places. So how does that impact the space and the environments they're in general? So there's all different things you have to consider. So I think there's this better relationship we're going into where humanity and the planet are working together now.
Can I add to this?
Of course.
Yeah. Thank you. In my talk this morning, I talked a bit about this thing that maybe sustainability is not enough, right? Because we've broken a lot of things already. So what you are talking about is going further towards regeneration, adding diversity again into these things that we might have broken. It's not only humans, right? Sometimes also a system can get a bit out of balance, but really thinking about how we can regenerate what is there, restorative regeneration, actually. Getting that back.
And minding balances, which is against all the sort of exploitative mindset, as in, for me, we'll use it. Yeah. And in a regenerative mindset, it's more about how do I find a good balance. So that's also really for businesses, thinking about it's not all about growth and profit, because that doesn't fit in that mindset. It's a big revolution we need, but it's a big step, a big change we need.
Yeah, Samuel, I loved what you added, what you were talking about that you have added as a piece to your, was it a service blueprint, where you have added planetary impact as a line item to your blueprints, just as a small change. Yeah. Does that come from?
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Miranda came up to me after the talk. She was like, "It's going to be very similar."
But it's a super strong tip, I think, for this community, because people often ask, what can I do if I can't get the briefs when my client is asking for the right things, but just do it. Yeah. You're in a position to shape projects, just put it in. You're making blueprints, you're making journeys, put it in. It's like ethics, right? It's the basics that you should consider.
I mean, what's great to see is how it's being picked up more and more and more. Especially here at the Service Design Conference, I'm very happy to see so many people using that, and working with it, because it was not always taken up so easily. I remember 3 years ago where people were like, "What are you talking about, Sam?" Right, with these non-human stakeholders. I'm not going to interview a tree, and now we're slowly getting there and having it's really small changes. Sometimes it's not more than adding this lane to your service blueprint. However, just adding that is not enough. You have to act on that, so remember that. But it's a start. And I very much want to value these starts, because one thing that I also have come across since I have been in this space is sometimes it's also people that work in sustainability fighting against other people in sustainability. Are you sustainable enough, right? So I did a bit the same, like sustainability is not enough, you have to be regenerative. But on the other hand, the worst thing that we can do as a community is making sustainability an exclusive club where only the coolest organizations and members can be part of it. Because we have to be open, we have to value also the small steps, which then, if I can segue into that, right, goes into the question of greenwashing, right? So there's a lot of positive things calling out greenwashing. On the other hand, I've come across smaller organizations that are so afraid of being called greenwashers that they stop doing this altogether. And that's the worst thing that can happen. And we need better ways to kind of value it, but transparently communicate so that it's not deceiving, as I learned from Thomas in the call before.
I agree with that, and it's super important talk as well, and it's super important to be critical about it, but also to engage. Because in a way, these organizations also ask for help. They feel that something needs to be done, and they are not capable to deal with it yet, but they need people to help with that. So it's not to escape to the easy part of the non-profits and the NGOs, but also work in the lion's den and help organizations move forward, because we need speed and we need change. Don't make the easy changes, the easy choices only.
Just to add to that speed side of things, that might mean different things for different organizations of different sizes and industries. Mm-hmm. So there's this classic saying of slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is dangerous. Understanding the right type of cadence for an organization where they think about sustainability, regenerative design is always important. Something that might work for a startup or an organization that has, let's say, under 100 organizations versus a huge international organization with over 100,000, their term of speed might be slightly different. So something that might take 6 months might be a long time for a small business and vice versa for a large organization. So it's making sure there's agreement there in terms of what does fast mean like, and how can we measure that over time.
Be sensitive to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to the audience. So just raise your hand, and I'll come around with the mic so that we can get you on the recording and get our virtual friends to hear what you're asking. No, that's okay.
Thank you all for sharing. This is, it's such a huge topic. It's always, you always keep on reflecting. And I think like during the conference, there has been a lot of conversation around designers coming out from that savior complex. And I've just been reflecting that, does that also apply to humans coming out of that savior complex when we're talking about the planet? And I wanted to hear your thoughts about that. Like, where do we place ourselves as humans?
Who wants to start?
I had similar thoughts because a lot of people brought up the savior complex. My answer is kind of twofold, right? One thing to me, at the very core of design practice, is building empathy. And this includes, to me, really like trying to understand that things might be thought, felt, done in different ways. That's hard enough for humans. It's very hard for the planet and these other things. But in the end, that's how we have to operate as humans, right? I cannot speak tree. I just can't. So I need to find a way. And it's just a compromise I have to do to kind of turn this into my human language so that I can interact with it with you, with the others, with you in a room, to do that on this side. On the other hand, I fully agree, it's not about, we don't have to save the planet, but we have to make sure we find our place within the planet, within that system again, so that it's balanced. So it's not about saving anything. I mean, I hope we don't destroy it even more. But it's really about decentering us, right? You said also from egoism more to the communities. I said we have to go from egoism to ecosystems, more kind of that thinking. So to just wrap this up, I just strongly believe that, especially in the service design practice, we are well equipped to do that, because we have always been everything and nothing, it feels like sometimes, right? So probably all of you had to explain at some point what you actually do. So we're quite comfortable in that position in between, but we have to be humble. I cannot say this even more, because I get really angry at arrogant designers thinking like, I can change everything. So I was nodding heavily when you were talking about that, right? So it's very, very important.
Can I add a thought to that? Because it was mentioned a few times, the savior thing, but I think there's another element that's as important, because the drive to want to save things is a good drive. I think the problem might be the glorification of projects. That you come out of design school, you do a project, and you're marked for the results of that project. You're an agency or are working in a team, you need to prove the impact of that project. That doesn't work. I feel definitely not with these wicked problems. So we need, and that's another part of humbleness, we need to accept that our projects are a drop in the ocean. No, not in the ocean, maybe not, a step in the right direction. And we need a lot of those steps to see the contribution. And only then we can look back and think, oh, that helped. So I think that's one of the things we have to get out of our talk, to glorify. And in these conferences, that's also difficult, because that's what conferences ask for. Can you give us a case study or journals or wherever? And what's the impact? And I'm not saying we shouldn't address that, because that's important to reflect on, but we shouldn't simplify it and try to find a way to talk about it in a more holistic and community way. How are we going in the right direction together? So that's another aspect. It's not so not to feel guilty that we want to make things better.
I have a hypothesis on this that you maybe can answer. So maybe is it communities that sustain the impact of projects over time?
Well, different.
Can I interrupt just 1 second? Can I ask you to use the handheld? They're having a little trouble hearing you on the virtual stage, so.
That's fine. I can just use this. So going back to what you said before, communities, they've naturally been birthed by who's around them. And sometimes communities evolve and change over time because there's new migrants coming in, coming out. The demographics are evolving over time just due to the local environment. Communities should always have a say in how their areas are shaped, whether, going back to the whole power to change situation, a lot of that grant money helped with creating new community greeneries to create local vegetables as well. So they actually knew what they wanted in those areas. I would add to the question that was said there, where there's another point to also consider. There's these hidden consequences, or there's another term for it, phantom costs, of trying to do good things sometimes. So a good example would be wildfires. As humans, we stop wildfires sometimes, but that's nature, or if it's naturally made, that fire is actually getting rid of all the trees so new sprouts can grow up over time. So there's always a consideration when, as humans, we try to do something for nature and the environment and climate. Could nature be just trying to solve the problem themselves, or are we just stopping them over time?
I love the example with the wildfires. I learned about that oops. I don't remember where I read it, but they also said that these First Nations peoples living in these lands, even sometimes putting the forest on fire on purpose, they're part of that ecosystem. So we really are part of nature. It's not humans against nature. We are part of that. We built quite some things that maybe are not so natural anymore, but I do believe there is a way how we can balance it out. And this is this example, right, where I can also connect that to sustainability and kind of protecting things, nature. Sometimes you're doing more harm by completely protecting it and not letting anybody in there anymore, so the soil degrades and so on. There's a role that we play as well. We just have to be more precise about it and understand that.
I have not so much a question, but maybe more of a comment based on the question that was asked. And then maybe the panel can comment on that and give their thoughts. So I might be throwing in some controversy here, but I hear a lot about saving and protecting the planet. But I'd say more so than saving the planet, we're trying to save ourselves, because the planet will be fine without us. And once it got rid of us, potentially it will recover. But we're doing all of this to save humanity and ourselves in a way.
Go ahead, you all.
Well, it's a nice provocation, but I think I have difficulty with the generalization that we all only want to save ourselves. I don't recognize that, and many of my people around me not. Of course, an element of it is people are dying and species are dying, and maybe we can reflect and do better. But yeah, I don't agree that it's only for humanity to survive. No, I have difficulty understanding why you say that, actually.
Sorry, maybe I can expand on it. I don't mean it's a bad thing that we're trying to save ourselves, but actually we need to think about the communities on the planet and also the humans that we're trying to do better for and that we're trying to save by thinking about the way that we treat the environment and that we treat the planet. So it's kind of part of the way that we can sell this as well, thinking about you're not doing this in a completely selfless, non-profitable way to just do something for the trees. Actually, you're doing good for all people on Earth.
Yeah.
I'll just add, on a more positive side of things, I think there's an element of, as humans, we're thinking more long-term. So yes, we want to survive and we want to make sure our grandkids and great-grandkids survive as well, but we also care about the planet. So we're thinking about how the things we do now impacts everyone. And we're part of that. Going back to what was said before, it's not humans versus the planet. We're in it together over time. So I completely understand where you're coming from, hopefully.
If I can just add to it, get that asked quite often. And it was interesting, tomorrow in the talk I asked the community, yeah, it's a community actually, to quickly think about what does sustainability mean to them. And one group said it's survival, right? So I actually like this idea, but I also have to say, like, to me, it's not about saving the planet, right? Because it's the planet will survive in itself. What I'm trying to add value to is the system we're living in, the planet as a system. So if you see the planet as just a rock out in space, then yeah, that's fine. But if you see the planet as what it is today, and you think about not saving it, but making it more valuable, and especially for who or what you make it more valuable, then I think you're on an interesting journey, at least. Is it easy? It's not. Do I know everything? Hell no. No, I'm learning every day still with the conversations what creating value for the planet actually means. But once we see it that way, there's a lot of opportunities that come out, and eventually we will even survive it. And I think that's the good thing that goes with that.
But if we try to think to that point, surviving as humanity and the planet as one thing, we need a different lifestyle, right? Because the current lifestyle of the past, 200 years, unsustainable. So it's not saving this humanity, but trying to work towards another humanity that is more in balance with the rest of the planet. That would be good.
All right, yeah. It was really great to see all you speaking. Thank you. Have you came upon the concept of authority? Because I think we talked a lot about empathy. What about authority?
Authority?
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Is the concept? Yeah. Well, it's the concept of the otherness.
Authority.
No.
What?
Otherness.
Otherness.
Yeah. It's authority, but it means otherness. So accepting that we are different and that's it. You have an empathy limit to things. Like you cannot feel like a tree, but you just respect a tree as it is. I think that's the. Have you came upon this kind of concepts before? Okay.
I mean, I don't know or do you want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I know, I was just going to say, it's a new concept to me, but I'm learning. That's a great thing. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
All of I've changed my mind about lately. I've just learned something new there.
I was, to be honest, thinking about these things quite often. Not this concept. I haven't heard that name in that. But there is value in letting things be what they are, right? Yeah. There's also some more philosophical way of thought, kind of the object-oriented ontology that really says like objects are in themselves and we shouldn't personify things all the time. I'm guilty of personifying things, but I think a bit earlier on the panel I said I'm willing to do this compromise to a certain extent because I have to find ways to connect with these things and I have to find ways to connect the people that I work with to these things. The only thing that I can do in this situation is to just make sure this is transparent, make sure that there is the disclaimer, hey, we're currently just personifying this tree and turning it into a persona. I mean, how funny is that? Or stupid to call it a tree persona. It's completely wrong. But I do believe we need a pragmatic way sometimes. So there's the philosopher's approach, which I really love, and maybe if you're at the after party tonight, we can really delve into the long discussions. So I love that. But then there's also the moment where I'm like, we have to, or I want to do something. Maybe we don't have to, but I want to be able to do something to connect and to get people to create the momentum. And that's where I'm willing, to be honest, to give in to certain compromises.
Give it a try.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer, but there's something to point you towards that might help. The three of us are coming from a Western, Northern background, but there's a lot of knowledge elsewhere. And also cultures who do have, I think, ways of knowing and speaking for and with trees, animals, materials. So I think that's a voice that is voices that are very, very important. So maybe we're not the best people to ask, but we're very eager to learn, actually. Very eager to learn.
Curious learners,
Yeah.
the three of
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
And it's super important, I think, as well.
All right, we're officially out of time, but I want to close with one lightning round question for each of you. In a one phrase answer, what is the first step? Give us a first step.
Understanding.
Any small step adds up to a big step. As long as it's in the right direction. Do no harm.
Making non-humans visible in our practice.
Sorry, I thought you said one word, so... Okay. So this is my do-over. Just edit it out. Don't worry. So understanding the bigger problems and who is impacted over time when I say understanding.
Thank you all very much for your insights and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you virtually.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all for your participation.